This podcast is available on our website, zipsportsmedia.com, and from all good podcast providers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Game of Two Halves. I'm your host, Sean Watson. Joining me once again is my very, very much appreciated co-host, Kieron Dobson. Kieron, third time of asking, third time lucky. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Sean, for the third time. Yeah, all's well. Just fingers crossed this recording comes out all right.
It's going out whatever format it comes out in. We're going to publish it. This is our third time trying to get this podcast and get this show on the road tonight. We've had a few technical difficulties, but let's hope that this is the one that perseveres and we can stick with it. So thank you once again for joining us. The reason we have had a few technical glitches is because we're hoping to put this one out in video format for the first time. As you know, if you do listen to us, we've had 20 odd episodes of our podcast in audio format available on iTunes and Spotify. But this week, we trialed it last week. We had our first ever YouTube snip of us talking football and talking NHS donations from Premier League footballers. That was available on YouTube, and on the back of that, we thought let's give it a go. Let's give the video format a go, and it seems to be the way forward. Everybody's got a little bit of time on their hands now with being in lockdown at least for another 3 weeks, as we found out earlier tonight. So we thought it best to try a video, and we'll go with it and roll with it and see how we go. If you can put up looking at our ugly mugs for an hour or the best part of it, then more power to you. And for our first video episode, we thought it'd be a good time to do our first ever player profile episode. We've been wanting to do this for a while, but this seems like the opportune time to do it. We've not got much football news, much sports news in general to go at. So we thought, let's do a deep dive on a particular player that we've talked about and wanted to do for a while. It won't be one of the obvious choices. Everybody knows everything about Messi and Ronaldo's careers. We won't be touching those. But for the first player profile this week, we have picked out the Dutch goal machine, Ruud Van Nistelrooy. So big fan. I'm a big fan of Van Nistelrooy. Kieran's also a big fan. And maybe after this podcast, if you weren't, you might be a Ruud Van Nistelrooy convert. So his stats are mind blowing. We're going to get into that a little bit deeper as the podcast progresses. But Kieran, you excited about covering Ruud in long form?
Yeah, I said before, I think you look back over his career, it's hard not to. When you look back retrospectively, you realise sort of maybe how forgotten some of his achievements are. So it's nice when you're looking back, and I think maybe it's opened my eyes a little bit and made me realise. I think retrospectively I've sort of downgraded him in my head, but having looked back over his career now, in the cold light of day, I think you have to put him up there. I'm not that anyone didn't, but I think you have to put him up there with the best strikers of all time.
Yeah. I think that's indisputable, and we'll tell you why. Ready to get rocking and rolling? Let's get right into it.
Yeah, but I'm ready.
So, as per my research, don't know this off by heart, but Ruud Johannes Martinus Van Nistelrooy, or Ruud as we know him, was born 1st of July 1976. Kieran, you'll know this off by heart by the time we finish tonight, I can assure you. That's the third time you've heard that line. Born in a town called Os in the Netherlands. I'm just going to whiz through the early part of his career just to set the scene a little bit. So he debuted for Den Bosch, started his professional career age 17. He was originally a midfielder, converted to a striker. Scored 12 goals in his first 31-game league season in 96-97. Didn't win anything that season. Got a transfer to Heerenveen. Scored 13 in 31 in his first season and only season for Heerenveen, but that caught the eye of PSV Eindhoven in 1998, and he signed for PSV for a then Dutch record between the two Dutch clubs of 6.3 million euros. That was his first big move. That was when he sort of moved onto the horizon of a few big European teams, obviously Manchester United included. And that was when he really took off as a player. He hit the ground running for PSV, setting all kinds of records, won 2 Golden Boots in his first 2 seasons. Scored 31 league goals in 34 league games in 98-99, which was incidentally not just the Golden Boot, second most in Europe. 41 in 46 in all comps. Went on to better that in his second season, 99-2000. 29 league goals in 23 league games, which is absolutely astonishing. More than a goal a game. that's up there with all-time great records. There's only a handful of people that have probably done that in the European top leagues. Again, scored 32 in 32, all competitions, a goal-a-game ratio. Another golden boot, and that caught the eye of Sir Alex Ferguson and the Manchester United hierarchy. So this is where we'll pick up the story in a little bit more detail. 2000 was set to be the year that he moved to United. The transfer looked to be set. He looked to be on the move. They set a press conference to announce the unveiling of him, but he failed a medical due to a dodgy knee that would plague him throughout his career. But the transfer was halted because of the dodgy knee to start with. They ended up using the press conference to announce that the transfer was off. And then a day after the press conference, Van Nistelrooy actually tore his cruciate ligament completely, probably as a result of his niggling knee injuries, and still playing on it or still training on it. So the cruciate ligament went completely. He was out for a full year, but Ferguson still decided to wait and take him up on his transfer option in 2001, a year later. We discussed this on the first incarnation of this podcast that we've had to abort, but that takes a special kind of player for Ferguson in his ruthless management style to do, doesn't it? To wait a year for.
Yeah, as we were saying, I think, Ferguson always used to say United was a bus that didn't wait for anyone. And Ferguson would always just go for, the best player he could get available. I think to wait for someone who's done their ACL, which, is almost career death in football these days, or pretty much any sport, after waiting a year, it's just sort of unheard of. And again, Ferguson, I don't think he would have done that for many of the players he signed. I think off the top of my head,
definitely not.
Cantona, Ronaldo, maybe Rooney.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise he moves on and looks at someone else. I think, you say it's telling that he waited for Ruud. And what it turned out to be the right decision.
Yeah, and you said on the first version of the podcast that we had to scrap that, maybe it would have been wise to wait a year and have a look at him again after he'd done his cruciate ligament, because, like you say, a lot of players just don't recover from that. They're not the same player.
Yeah, I mean, I was alluding back to Liverpool were close to signing Fekir a couple of years ago from Lyon, to the point where I think they had photos of him wearing the Liverpool shirt, doing the press photos for the website, and then they found something, I think, with his knee. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's now ended up at Betis, and I think that, again, as you say, years gone by, you'd have waited for that player. Sorry, you look at it now, and again, even with all the development we've had with sports science and everything else, there's still not an awful lot you can do about the ACL. So it's sort of crazy that Ruud Van Nistelrooy overcame it. I remember Strootman as well for United. I think Van Gaal was really keen on getting Strootman to play in that defensive midfield role, and we eventually had to move on from that, and we tried and failed with Daley Blind there. But again, I can't think of many other players that have come back from an ACL injury and either hit the same level that they were at, or 80% of it. So again, it's kind of mad that early 2000s Ruud Van Nistelrooy sort of overcame it. Granted, he was young, but I don't know.
Was it Luke Nillis that had the same injury?
Luke Nillis,
Villa. Was it the same injury, or did he break his leg?
I think he snapped his leg.
Okay.
I think he snapped it.
Because he was his strike partner, wasn't he, at PSV, which was interesting. Would have been an interesting coincidence. But really good player, Luke Nillis, as well. It's a massive shame it didn't work out for him. And if scored that great goal, didn't he, for Villa on his debut? Yeah. And then I think it was the same game that he did his leg.
Might have been. We had speaking of Villa and United strikers, Dion Dublin had the same thing when he signed for us, didn't he? We signed and he snapped his leg. So we have had
worked out well, though, Kieran. We signed Cantona, didn't we? Because we had to do so. It's one of those. I mean, didn't work out well. It worked out okay for Dublin.
Dion's smashing it.
He had a good career. Dublin. And look at him now. Homes under the hammer. You know, stairs leading up to the bedroom. He's got it going.
Instrument inventor.
Yeah, absolutely. Dion's gone from strength to strength. It worked out fine for him. So, I think we've gone a bit of a tangent there. So
there's one last thing to say about Dion Dublin, if you'll let me.
Fire away.
I think, let me get the direct quote up what Ferguson said about him.
Seems like a lovely man.
Yeah, he had it all. by all accounts. Dion Dublin, Ferguson. Do you know what I'm going to say?
No idea.
Oh, Christ.
I don't think I've heard this.
It.
Oh, God, right. Just remember, if we're putting this out in video form, it's going to be more difficult to edit out things that we're not supposed to say.
I can't find it. I'm sure fellow Dion Dublin stands out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Let's just say he was quite long in the shower.
Okay. Was he? Took his time. Good. If you're a Dion Dublin fan, you'll know what Kieran's talking about. And if you're not, then probably best you don't. Right. Ruud Van Nistelrooy, Kieran, signed in the summer of 2001 after a year of waiting for £19 million, which I think was a United transfer record at the time, surpassing Veron of the same year. I think Veron was 18, Van Nistelrooy was 19. I think I'm right in saying that. Don't think we had anybody signing for more than that. Signs for United in 2001, scores on his debut, first Premier League hat-trick in December in a 6-1 win over Southampton. Scores 2 against Aston Villa coming off the bench in the FA Cup to turn the game around from 2-0 down to 3-2 up. Scored 2 brilliant goals, and maybe 2 of my favourite Van Nistelrooy goals for us. Finished his first season with 23 league goals, scored in 8 consecutive games, which was a Premier League record at the time. Won the PFA Player of the Year, scored 10 Champions League goals, and scored in 36 in 49 in all competitions. How was that for a first year after a cruciate ligament injury?
Crazy. Wikipedia is a great thing, isn't it, Sean?
Absolutely. Just a site right now, Wikipedia is my source. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, we've got exactly the same notes.
I'm just setting the scene, to be honest. There'll be a lot of padding out around that, but
I reinvent the wheel.
It's the same wherever you read it, Kieran. The goals went in, so that's an astonishing first season.
Yeah, just ridiculous. Again, for a player to come in from Holland as well, it's a free scoring league, and lots of players have been signed from Holland, good and bad, over the years because of the goal scoring record, and to hit the ground running when you take the step up to United in the Premier League, it's a big thing. But to do it and win PFA Player of the Year, score 23 goals that year,
league goals.
And again, when you mention off his a year off doing his ACL, and the other thing again, when you take into account that the deal was almost wrapped up a year before, and you've got to deal with the mental side of that. Yeah. What a guy.
You coined a phrase on the most recent podcast that we published, mentality monster.
I did.
I liked it. No, I know, but you chucked it in.
I only chucked it in as a little side swipe at Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, he's right though, isn't he? That is a mentality.
Yeah, monster. No, to just be so driven, have so much self-belief. I think that's probably it's the best and worst thing about sports players, and probably the best and worst thing about the players that Sir Alex Ferguson signed, and the best thing about Ferguson was moving them on at the right time, as we'll come on to with Ruud. But yeah, when you are good and you have that belief in yourself, it's an absolute weapon. So
did you instantly take to Van Nistelrooy as a United fan? I mean, who wouldn't? But you know what I mean, as a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah, no, without doubt. For me, I remember I vividly remember the year we didn't get him, and then when we followed up the year after and did get the guy that we wanted, I fell a lot. I think I've mentioned to you before, I'm obsessed with Dutch football.
You might have mentioned it.
I don't watch Eredivisie week in, week out, but just I was a Wales fan growing up, and obviously it was quite hard as a 10-year-old, but I always used to follow Holland in international tournaments, mainly because of the orange kit, but also the way they played. Kit. So for me, when we got Van Nistelrooy, I was all in. Yeah.
Holland's the only other international kit I've had other than England. It's just a great kit. I had the away kit.
Which year?
2012. It was the black away kit with the orange stripe over the badge. I might put it up there next week. I should have done it this week. Should have thought on.
I was very, very close to getting the Van Gaal, the kit that they had under Van Gaal's second term. The one that they beat Spain in.
5-0.
That blue.
Yeah.
5-1.
5-1. The Daily Blind, crossfield ball, Van Persie, Concorde taken off. Yeah. Some goal. So not a bad first year. Incidentally, only one player since that first season has ever scored more goals in all competitions for United in one season, other than Van Nistelrooy himself in the next season. Only one other player's done it, and that's Ronaldo.
Christ.
When
you put it like that.
If my calculations are correct, but I am just going to do a quick fact check right now because I've thought of one player that might have done it, fellow Dutchman, Robin Van Persie, that I didn't think of at the time. So just bear with me 1 second. But even so, even if it is just Van Persie and Ronaldo, Van Persie was 7 years ago. The point I'm making is and all right, you obviously rate Martial, Rashford's still progressing. We haven't had a player score anywhere near enough goals since then. Since Van Persie at the earliest.
No, I mean, again, we'll come. I think it's something we're going to discuss as we go through the podcast. But I mean, the game has changed quite a lot. I think the days of Ruud Van Nistelrooy's who would live to score goals are probably.
I was right. Van Persie scored 30.
There you go.
Yeah, I was right. But yeah, I know. But why don't players live to score goals now? Aguero lives to score goals. Ronaldo does. Yeah.
There are players out there, but I mean, the game by and large has moved away from that.
But what I'd say is teams with players who live to score goals generally win trophies. Look at Salah for Liverpool. When he gets the ball, he wants to score. Like, that's his only thought. Aguero.
I don't want to put this on this podcast because we'll never come off the topic.
Okay. We'll save that.
You have to have the right player for the right system, don't you?
Of course you do. Just something to chew on. 2002, 2003. This was his real marquee season for us, wasn't it? Won the league, scored 25 league goals in 34 games, scored 44 league goals in 52 games in all competitions. 44 goals in 52 all competitions, which hasn't been bettered since. Not even Ronaldo's 2007-2008 season beats that. That was 42. Scored 12 goals in Europe, and United only made the quarterfinals, which is astonishing. That's more than a goal a game in Europe, and that's the absolute elite level. 3 hat-tricks scored in the final 8 games of the season to lead United to the Premier League title. Wins the Premier League Player of the Year. This is Van Nistelrooy's crowning moment in his career, isn't it?
That's a player at his peak. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more to say. Just like you say, goal machine.
Yeah, the goal against Fulham.
Van the man, but
Van the man, that works.
Yeah, goal machine would have worked. He just scored. He knew where to be.
Yeah,
and he knew where the net was.
Yeah, absolutely. Scoring in his the last 8 Premier League games to take us to the title in a time where Arsenal were ahead of us for a lot of that title race.
That was the thing about it, was that you scored week in, week out during that title running when, we were behind. So to score week in, week out and eventually lead us to that trophy, that's just, yeah.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. A couple of standout moments in that season for me. So just to pick up on that run, just to finish off on that 8-game run at the end of the season, Daniel Harris, who wrote the book Promised Land, I'm reading right now, quick plug, but he wrote that book and he said that's the best run he's ever seen from any single player in a United shirt.
High praise.
High praise because he obviously knows his stuff. He's written literature on it. There's, that's a man who knows his United history. So for him to say that, I'm happy to take him at his word for that.
Yeah, there are definitely. I mean, there are, United being United, there are other players that have had similar runs that are definitely contenders.
Yeah, look at Ronaldo.
So
Absolutely.
there are definitely, but yeah, I mean that again.
It's as good as any.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, I think that's probably the thing I would say is that maybe upon reflection, you have to put Ruud up a level. where I had him in my head, he was probably second tier. But looking back now again, I think you have to look at things in the cold light of day. You have to say that he was the absolute one of the top players, one of the best players that we've ever had.
Yeah, and another point to make, I think, is the fact that he played for us during, one of United's leaner periods of the 90s and 2000s. There was one league title in 5 years, I think, during that run, the one that we're talking about right now. He wasn't in our best three Ferguson teams, was he? When you think of the 94 double winning team, 99, 2008, he was in the period between those three. And that, to me, pushed him on even further, because you've got to credit him even more, because he's still scoring absolute shed full of goals in that team that wasn't peak United or peak Ferguson.
This is where the debate starts, though, for me, because, and I don't know whether we want to go through the rest of his career before we maybe talk about this, but you can't argue with his goals. There's just no point. Absolutely ridiculous record. But we won trophies with Ruud Van Nistelrooy, but we weren't the trophy winners that we were when he went. We weren't the trophy winners that we were before Ruud Van Nistelrooy. And when you look back retrospectively, and at the time, at the club we were with Ruud, a lot of his happier days were when he had David Beckham supplying crosses, when he had Paul Scholes alongside to feed him, ball in the box, when he had Giggs, playing crosses and good passes in. Those were his better days. He struggled when Rooney and Ronaldo came into the team, because it was more of a pace game. Ronaldo wasn't necessarily a winger that would cross the ball.
As we will get to.
Yeah. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think that's probably where, when you look back at his career, you have to say, how good is that type of striker? And again, the game's changed now. Would he really have a place in modern football? But I do think it's right we go through the rest of his career before we go down that road.
We can save a slot at the end to discuss. So, first Premier League title, only Premier League title under the belt, 2003. He scored in his first two Premier League games in 2003, 2004, which took him to 10 in a row, counting the 8 at the end of the previous season, which, again, was a Premier League record, only surpassed by Jamie Vardy, I think 5 years ago now. I think it is.
Yeah,
6.
yeah.
15-16 season. It's 11, it's heaven for Jamie Vardy. Classic Tyler. But, again, that's a record that stood for 10 years plus. He scored his 100th goal for United in just 2.5 years, that's a staggering record.
Yeah, ridiculous. Again, there's only so much you can say about, again, his goal record is just through the roof. He was a machine, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know. There's only so much you can say. I'll just read the stats. Scored twice in the FA Cup final for his first and only FA Cup. 20 league goals in 32 league games, 30 in 44 all competitions. Again, 30 goals in all comps, just not to be sniffed at all. Don't care what the team's like, who's providing the service, how many tap-ins he scores. It's a phenomenal record. I've written down Arsenal game.
Yeah, the Battle of Old Trafford.
The Battle of Old Trafford, indeed.
As.
That could be a game that we do a full podcast on, to be honest.
Yeah.
Watch along or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Obviously, Van Nistelrooy right at the centre of the action in that game. Bit of needle, I think it's fair to say, throughout the game. Tensions and tensions running high, blood pressure rising, blah blah blah. Van Nistelrooy gets a 90th minute penalty. Hits the crossbar. Chaos ensues, doesn't it? Keown's getting in his face. I think Vieira came in, Loren came in, pushed him about. I seem to remember Giggs getting involved for some reason, and I thought, come on, Ryan, you couldn't knock anybody out, mate. What are you doing here?
Whoa.
Nah. I think he picked on Vieira.
Have you seen his
arms? I think it was Ashley Cole, actually. I think he probably picked the front of the litter. still couldn't knock anybody out. It's Giggs.
I'm not saying he's going to knock anyone out, but that's never happening on a football pitch anyway, is it?
Wouldn't happen in real life. It's Ryan Giggs. He's too. When did you ever see him going crunching to a tackle? Didn't happen. Never won an header. He's just not a physical type of guy. He might have muscles to high heaven in places. He might have muscles on muscles, Kieran, but doesn't make you a fighter.
Well, again, not what I'm looking for in a football, but yeah, I want to see my players getting involved, defending.
Yeah, so do I.
Teammates, whether you're going to win the battle or not.
Yeah.
Keane always said that he was never going to beat Vieira in a fight, but you need to step up.
Yeah, that's true. No, he did say that.
Yeah, so take it back.
I know, I refuse to take it back, but I'm still I'm standing by it. Oh, my pen just broke. It's a sad day. So yes, Van Nistelrooy took a hell of a lot of abuse that game. Game ended 0-0. I think if we'd have won that game, was that the first game of Arsenal's unbeaten run? 49, 1 or 2. I think it was 1 or 2 into the 49 game unbeaten run. So if Van Nistelrooy scored, I mean, there's a lot of ifs and buts along the way, but if Van Nistelrooy had scored that penalty, the invincible season definitely wouldn't have happened because that was the year.
Yeah, no, definitely not. It was part of the invincible run. I don't remember it being that early in it, but it was definitely part of it. If he'd won that, they wouldn't have got to 49.
September 03 stands out in my mind. So.
Oh, you might be right. Thankfully, they never got to 50 because of Ruud Van Nistelrooy. But ridiculous game. Probably the peak football rivalry for me.
Not the next season at the Emirates at Highbury. See you out there.
Yeah.
That was it, wasn't it?
That was the absolute, the top football. Obviously, we've talked before about this rivalry, but I've talked about Liverpool, City, even Chelsea in the past. But as a fan, it never, ever. I just remember these were two teams at the peak of the powers. We were, we'd won everything with Ferguson against that, different versions of Wenger's teams, and Wenger was always there. They'd won Premier Leagues, and they were always challenging us, and obviously they went on invincible. They went on an invincible run and won the Premier League. We were a good team then too, and you would just go toe to toe. The managers, you could make a case for either of them at the time as to who was better. You go from each player front to back in their 11. It was just toe to toe. Lauren versus Neville, Henry, Van Nistelrooy, Giggs, Perez, Ronaldo, Ljungberg, Vieira, Keane. It was just absolute peak. And obviously,
Campbell, Ferdinand.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about, I think really, when we talk about Van Nistelrooy, this is probably what defines him as a United player for me, because it was always Van Nistelrooy versus Henry. And I remember being a kid, being Van Nistelrooy's better than Henry. And I remember arguing that till I was blue in the face as a kid. And I had the stats to back me up. He scored the goals. He got the PFA trophy. He was, great scorer in Europe. I had everything I needed to make that argument. And I think that the way his career ended at United and the way his career sort of ended due to injury, and maybe the way people look back at football now with Henry sort of still being the face of the Premier League and in my opinion, the best Premier League player of all time, I think that does sort of, it has sort of blurred Ruud Van Nistelrooy's legacy. But I think that anyone who didn't watch football back then should go back and rewatch some of those games, because Van Nistelrooy gave as good as he got against Arsenal and Henry. Again, when you look back over his career and its stats, you can make the case that he was the more important player. When United were the better team, he was our go-to guy. And again, his goal record is just absolutely ridiculous. So again, Henry for me now retrospectively edges it, because you look at his, he gets Kevin De Bruyne assists and Ruud Van Nistelrooy goals, and he could score in so many different ways. But what Van Nistelrooy was good at, which was knowing where the goal was, always being in the right place at the right time when the ball was coming into the box, he could score with his head, he could score with his feet, he could score with his back to goal, he could just touch it and flick it to the side. And that volley I'm thinking of, where he chests it down, volleys it into the back.
Charlton away.
Yeah.
Just instinct.
Yeah.
Instinct. I don't think I've ever seen a more instinctual finisher than Van Nistelrooy.
I think Keane said he's the best finisher he ever played with. And again, you look at the strikers he played with at United, you have to say that is saying something. So
high praise.
Absolute killer in front of goal. So for me, I'll always remember Van Nistelrooy in that prison, that us versus Arsenal days, and that's probably again they were the peak Barclays days, I would say.
Yeah,
I don't know what you think.
No, absolutely agree. That was the pinnacle of English football, wasn't it? That period of Wenger against Ferguson, up until probably Wenger won his last league in 2004, 97 to 2004 or something like that. Maybe 2005. That was it. That was the rivalry, wasn't it, in English football? Maybe till Chelsea came and knocked us both off. But it was United Arsenal.
The last thing I'd say about that, I probably should have mentioned earlier, is that we're talking about the Battle of Old Trafford. The other side to Van Nistelrooy was that he was nasty.
Get to that in the next segment, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just to say that in these games, I saw a quote from Lauren doing my research when he was just saying that Van Nistelrooy would just find ways to wind up every player on the pitch. And you look back now, and he used to wind up his own players. There were football players on our team. He was always whinging and always complaining about his own players, but he would wind up other teams. But he also had that, like you say, needle. I remember in that game, I think was it in the game that we beat them to end their run, where nice little segue into that then, where he
absolutely
through Asher Cole's knee. So nasty bastard.
Yeah.
But when those were the days, United Arsenal games were like that, and you wanted that.
Absolutely.
I love how dirty we were during that game, and Van Nistelrooy had that about him.
Yeah, and Arsenal gave as good as they got, 100%. Yeah. The game in the 2002-03 season where Campbell elbowed Solskjaer, excuse me, same thing. They just had that back and forth. But as you say, let's skip forward then to the next season. So 0-3-4 ended in the FA Cup, the FA Cup win. 2004-2005, the return match from the Battle of Old Trafford. So a year on, Van Nistelrooy gets a penalty against Arsenal again. At this point, they're 49 games unbeaten. Rooney dives for a penalty. He did.
He did dive, but I still think there's a foul in there.
Even me. Even I'm saying it. So
Campbell sticks his leg out.
Well, he did, yeah, but Rooney. Well, anyway.
He buys it.
Anyway, a year on, exercising the demons, Van Nistelrooy tucks the penalty away, does the famous celebration in the corner flag where he goes mental. Then nobbles Ashley Cole, gets a retrospective 3-match ban after the referee missed it. And it was a really dirty tackle, as you say. It was sort of studs down the knee, wasn't it? It was a bad one.
In today's game, particularly if it was a player with the profile of Van Nistelrooy in that high profile game, it'd have been 8-9 games. Definitely, they'd have made an example of him.
It wasn't a million miles away from Keane Haaland, was it? It wasn't that far away.
He could have ended Cole's career. He could have.
Yeah.
If that goes a different way, or Cole's legs slightly the wrong place, game over.
Absolutely. And incidentally in that game, I don't know if you remember, but Gary Neville was kicking chunks out of Reyes, yeah.
Rest in peace.
Absolutely. But Neville was kicking lumps out of him all game, which incidentally led to the needle in the tunnel at the return match at Highbury. So, big moment for Van Nistelrooy, I think, personally, to get over the horrors of last year, missing the penalty and getting the abuse he did. He stuck it to Arsenal there by ending their 49-game unbeaten run. Didn't let them get to 50. Rooney got the second, killed them off. That might have been the end of Arsenal as an English force.
Yeah, it felt like that. I actually remember I remember watching that game. I was at my dad's in North Wales, and I said we didn't have Sky Sports. My dad was not a football man, so we went and watched it in this pub that's now shut down. And what year is that now? How old am I? I'd have been
12.
yeah, 11, 12, loud enough to shout, but bollocks probably hadn't dropped, so I was probably quite a squeaky shouter. But I remember my dad took me. There was an Arsenal fan nearby, and I remember that rivalry was everything to me at that time. I remember everything about it, and I remember just being completely enthralled. It was so tribal, and I remember when we got the penalty, and when Van Nistelrooy steps up, and obviously, like you say, their run sort of starts where he misses that penalty late on. Would have won us the game, could have changed the course of history.
Yeah.
He misses it, and then we've got a chance. He's got a chance to redeem himself here, and you know how important it is to him for his, his mental state, and you know what it means to United. We have to win this game, otherwise they win 50 on our patch. And I remember just going as mad as Van Nistelrooy does when he puts it away. I remember embarrassing my family because my dad was there, my cousin, and I was going absolutely ridiculous. And at the time, I remember thinking, this is all, fair game. Of course, I should be going this mad. But I look back now and imagine my 12-year-old self, like, punching the air and screaming in a pub.
Exactly the right way to do it.
Yeah, but it wasn't the time or place. My dad, if you know...
What is the time or place, though? Like,
oh, no, sorry.
United, Arsenal.
It's exactly the type of place, unless you're at Old Trafford. But at that age, I cringe for my dad looking back, because that's not the son he wanted. Let's put it that way.
It's the son he's got, though, Kieran.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, absolute hell of a game. What a game.
Yeah, absolutely. So trophyless season, actually. The only trophyless season. No, the second trophyless season. He didn't win a trophy in 0-1-2 either. So tell it like that. But yeah, so trophyless season. But one milestone he did pass in 2004-2005 was that he surpassed Dennis Law to become United's all-time European scorer in just 3 seasons, which again, phenomenal. Considering Law played for us, I know we weren't in Europe every season, but played for us for the best part of, I think, 12 years, at least 10 years, Dennis Law. Rooney's since surpassed Van Nistelrooy, but that's just due to longevity. It's not goals per game or anything like that. 38 European goals he scored for us, Van Nistelrooy, in 5 seasons.
See, if we talk about the 04-05 season still, he actually scored 8 goals that year, but he had like an injury-ridden year.
Yeah. Did we get out of the groups that year? I don't think we did we?
I don't remember, but he still scored the most Champions League goals again, which tells you how
we didn't get deep. We didn't get deep that year.
Was it the one we got knocked out by
AC? Yeah. That was AC, wasn't it? Do you remember AC knocking us out?
Yeah.
Crespo, because that was the year they went to Istanbul.
Yeah.
So we might have gone quite far in the tournament that year. Yeah, maybe tell a lie, but even so, he top scored in the Champions League. I think 2 out of the 3-4 seasons we played in it, or something like that.
Yeah.
He was just prolific in Europe. He scored 4 against Sparta Prague in 1 game.
Yeah.
I think that season. Phenomenal. The game that stands out for me in Europe for Van Nistelrooy was Basel away.
Yeah, it does for me, but I can't remember why.
2 goals in a minute. Scored twice in a minute. So he scored, kicked off, and
I
he
need
did that
to
dribble.
revisit that. You're right. Yeah.
Right on the byline. And I remember John Champion was doing the commentary. And still.
Yeah.
2 goals in a minute. Great moment. I remember watching him ran off with his hand in the air in the white kit. Great moment. But he was just a killer in Europe, Van Nistelrooy. He was made for European football. It's a shame he was, and again, hark back to it. It's a shame that he didn't get to the later stages of the competition. Yeah, I think it wasn't a semi-final, was it? Where we got beat to AC. It would have been a quarter-final where Crespo scored.
Yeah,
I don't remember us getting to a semi. I think the first semi we got to was AC in 2007. First semi since Leverkusen.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, so that was after he left. So, yeah, it's a shame for Van Nistelrooy that he never got to the later stages of the Champions League, but such is life. So in that season he scored 6 league goals, but as Kieran said, he was very, very injury plagued that year. He had a bad year. Still managed 16 in all comps, not to be sniffed at. So let's move forward into what would be his final year for United. 21 league goals. Again, not many players have surpassed 20 league goals for us. And this is despite starting 6 games in a row on the bench towards the end of the year. Barely got minutes in the last 2 months of the season. Still managed 21 league goals and still managed I think it was just under 30 in all competitions. Didn't actually write that down, but this is the year that he was benched for the Carling Cup final. He played Sahar in front of him, which, fine, we won 4-0. Doesn't matter. But there was rumblings of a dispute with Ferguson, and then a very public bust-up with Ronaldo on the training pitch. Go on, you're itching to say something.
Just to say, so in that Carling Cup final, the fallout, Ferguson says this in his book, it comes from the subs. Van Nistelrooy wanted to come on to score a goal in the final, and Ferguson went with Nemanja Vidic and Patrice Evra to bring on as the subs because he wanted to give them a flavour of winning a trophy.
Yeah, they just signed, hadn't they?
Yeah, for United. And again, you look back and Ferguson nailed it, like he nailed all those sort of decisions seemingly at the time, and you got very few of those ones wrong. But obviously Van Nistelrooy, I think, was sensing that he knew that Ferguson had sort of moved on, and we've seen it before with Ferguson, and it didn't matter how many times it happened. The players never really saw it coming. But I think even another thing I've read respectively was something that Rooney said, that because obviously Rooney had been there the year before. And he said that he never felt that Ruud was happy because I think Ruud always sort of was getting a sense that Ferguson was moving on from him. And again, you talk about that, the end of that season, 6 straight games off, he's been benched, and then he's not bringing him on to get a goal in the final. And you think all those goals he scored from the year prior, that is Ferguson. That is sort of most brutal. But
yeah, he did the same with Rooney, didn't he? In Ferguson's last year. Same thing.
This is the thing, and this is why I have this argument with you, because goals aren't everything for a striker. Ferguson knows Van Nistelrooy's getting all those goals, but he's making a decision for the good of the team.
Yeah, and the future of the team, not just the there and now.
And the style of play. And, this is the sad thing for me with Rooney. I love Rooney now. I loved Rooney then. But post-Ferguson, I was ready to move on from Rooney. And who knows what would have happened if he'd have gone. And it's great that he got the record, but I do look back and think, maybe if we'd moved on sooner and we'd have gone in a different direction, and Ferguson had stayed on, maybe Kagawa would have gone on to be a better player than he was. Ferguson, who knows where?
I didn't expect Shinji Kagawa to be mentioned on this podcast, I've got to say.
I was a big Shinji Kagawa fan.
You would be.
No, again, this isn't the time or place, but Ferguson. What I'm trying to, I suppose, I should really say is that Ferguson, he'd make his mind up early on a guy, and he would never, Ruud, he'd made his decision the year before that he was going to start going with Rooney, Ronaldo and looking towards the future, but he kept Ruud and then moved him on when the time was right. And he did the same. He was doing the same with Rooney. He brought in Shinji, and he knew that 5 years later it was Shinji was the plan he had. Rooney, he was easing him out, and I think had he stayed on for another year or so, we'd have seen that happen. And again, I think Ruud was getting a sense that was what was going on, and obviously that's where they fall out.
Yeah.
As a fan, I remember at the time being gutted because I was a big Ronaldo fan. I know you weren't necessarily early on, but I just wanted to see us give the keys to Ronaldo and Rooney at that point. But it saddened me because Ruud had been such a good servant and such a goal scorer for the club.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is difficult to see.
Yeah. Just on the Ronaldo point, to me, having had 3-4 years of growing up with Becks and instant first-time crosses, Ronaldo's first 2 years for me were very frustrating. That it was just a change. As a 10-year-old kid, I didn't understand the game properly, and seeing him try and beat 3 men before putting the ball in wasn't what I was prone to. And obviously he wasn't scoring the goals that he went on to score. So at that point, I wasn't enamoured by him, and so when Ferguson picked Ronaldo over Van Nistelrooy, and especially after the World Cup where Ronaldo was involved in Rooney sending off, that didn't sit particularly well with me. But then, who cares what I think? Literally, who cares what I think? He went on and won 3 leagues in a row and Champions League, and Ronaldo's who he is today. So
you were the youngest football dinosaur in the world.
Absolutely.
I'm joking. I was one of the few that did love Ronaldo from day one. I loved the spaghetti thing in his hair.
What was that? Was that even hair? What was that?
Don't know. Didn't care. Wanted it. Luckily, no one in my family would let me do
Um,
it.
oh, I was hoping for some
No,
retro pictures there.
I might get him now, like make up for the hairline in the
Do
corners. I
it.
don't know. But he was everything to me, and I loved him, and particularly I remember, again, Welshman. I did not care that Rooney had got sent off. I didn't care
No,
that
we never.
Albert Wing.
Right, so you wouldn't. I'd forgotten about that, but
But
you
I mean, at
definitely
the end of
wouldn't.
the day, Rooney.
As an England fan, mate.
Yeah, but Rooney had stamped on the crotch of Carvalho.
Yeah, looking back now,
Oh no!
it's
At the
absolute red
time,
card.
it was clear.
100%.
It was only these blinded England fans that couldn't see it. But whatever. But yeah, we've got a little off kilter, but it's fine. But yeah, Ruud Van Nistelrooy, I think when you look back at his career, it is these 2 years which probably do blur the story a little bit, and because he was one of our best ever goal scorers, and he's sort of forgotten because Rooney Ronaldo come in, and there's still a little bit of a transition couple of years going on, but eventually they go on and we hit bigger heights than we ever did with Van Nistelrooy. And it's a shame for Van Nistelrooy's legacy, but hopefully everyone listens to this podcast and remembers just how good a goal scorer he was for us.
Absolutely. So the icing on the cake for Van Nistelrooy was he fell out with Ronaldo for not crossing quickly enough. They had a bust up in training. He said, I don't know if this is actual fact, but this is pulled from Wikipedia, so, sue me. But he apparently said to Ronaldo, go cry to your dad, meaning Kairos, but Ronaldo thought he'd meant his own dad who'd passed away like a year before or something like that. So that didn't sit particularly well. And that was probably the final straw for Fergie. Peddled him not long after in the summer for measly 14 million euros to Real Madrid, which is tuppence. Even then, that was tuppence for a player of Van Nistelrooy's calibre. Just to put the bow on Van Nistelrooy's United career, it was 150 goals in 219 games, which is just under 0.75 goal to game ratio, which is nobody's come close. Nobody's come close to that since. Before or since, in all honesty.
No, and the thing is, obviously, we're going to touch his Real Madrid career in a minute, but he wasn't done when we sold him. It was just that Ferguson had changed his ideas about the game. I think had we kept him and Ferguson had carried on, I mean, if we were any other club, if Van Nistelrooy was playing for a new big team, they'd have kept him out of the loyalty, and Ferguson was really good at moving on, but he would have carried on scoring. He would have broken God knows how many records if he'd have stuck around. But again, ultimately, it was the right decision to move him on. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the other things people forget is when he moved to Real Madrid that he actually was a really good striker for them. I think I don't know, maybe it's different for other people, but maybe I overlooked how good he was for Madrid and how successful he was there.
Yeah, absolutely. So sold to Madrid in 2006. His first season with Madrid, he scored 25 goals in 37 league games, won the La Liga Golden Boot, won the league, 33 and 47 all competitions. So he picked up basically where he left off for United. He was still in his prime. He was still scoring a lot of goals. And as you alluded to earlier, he had Beck's back on the right wing for Real Madrid, which, let's not underestimate the value of that partnership.
And he's playing up front with Ronaldo as well.
Yeah, which is, I think he said was quite important to him.
So.
Van Nistelrooy and the original Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Dear me. I can't think of a better strike partnership in world history. Going off the names.
Been there, isn't there?
Yeah. Just
ridiculous, yeah. Don't know, again, if you're a defender, you're one of the centre backs, you just, I don't know what you do. Pray.
No. Yeah, just say your prayers and hope. That's it. So that's probably his last great season. From there, he started to tail off. 07-08, 16 and 24 in the league, 20 in all competitions. And then the dreaded knee injury strikes again. And to be honest, that was probably just about that for his top level career. In his last season, 2009-2010, he did play with Cristiano Ronaldo again, which was probably an interesting dynamic. There wasn't too much said about that on pages where I got my research from, but
I remember it because obviously I think it's a bit of a cliche that Dutch footballers have a bit of ego about them, and they're always falling out. And Van Nistelrooy was very much at the centre of that in the Dutch squads, but also, we saw at United he'd fallen out with Ferguson. He didn't like Ronaldo necessarily as a player, and then it must have been something for him having sort of his United career ended by mixture of Rooney and Ronaldo, and then to go to Madrid, and then the knee lets him down, and then Ronaldo comes in for a world record fee, and again the spotlight's taken off him. I do feel for him in that respect, but again, no, he's not going to cry. He had a great career.
No, absolutely not.
So yeah,
great career, one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
In terms of goal scoring strikers, he moved to Hamburg after that, spent a couple of years there. Moved to Malaga, and that was when he wrapped it up in 2012. Touch on his international career just briefly. Scored 35 goals in 70 international caps, which is simple maths, brings us out at a goal every 2 games. Again, very, very good for international level, considering the stop-start nature of international football. Played in 3 major tournaments between 2004 and 2008, 2 Euros and the World Cup sandwiched in between. Finally retired from international football in 2010 when he was left out of the 2010 Dutch World Cup squad. And that was that for international football. Never won a trophy on the international stage. Came probably closest in 2004 in the Euros then. But so his career club total statistics is 349 goals in 592 games. Anybody who scores anything over 200, 250 career goals is top tier of a striker. So call it 350 and 600 is absolutely brilliant, right? Those are the stats. We've said everything we need to say about him. Let's just contextualize him in terms of football history. Where would you rate him in terms of all-time goal scorers and strikers?
So yeah, I mean, in terms of just goal scorers, he's in the top handful. But I think the way the game is played now and the way it was moving away from sort of, I don't want to call him a poacher because he wasn't a poacher, but just out and out goal scorers. When you look at him in the context of all the strikers that have come since and the way, I don't know, it's difficult. I think again, for me, best thing I can say about him was that there was an argument about whether he was better than Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
It was a really good argument. Like you could, again, I didn't know many Arsenal fans as a kid, but I remember Liverpool fans who had nothing else to cheer for who would argue that Henry was better than Van Nistelrooy.
Yeah.
And, they were probably right. And I think, again, the way the game's gone now,
he's in the conversation, Kieran. That's it. You'll never fully say he's better. It's subjective. That's football. Unless you pin it purely on the stats.
Again, the way the game's gone now and the way that strikers have to contribute to, the rest of the game and create for the players and things like that. I think Henry is always going to be looked back on as the better player, and probably rightly so. But at that time, United needed goals, and they went out and got the best goal scorer they could get, and he scored lots of goals for them and made us competitive against the great Arsenal team. And again, one of the best signings Ferguson ever makes. And I do, you do have to wonder what would have happened if it weren't for his knee as well. I'm talking about before we'd signed him, because again, when you look back at, who else is there that's done their ACL and hit again the same level or 80% of it?
Roy Keane.
Yeah. But again, maybe the two players are, no one ever says about Van Nistelrooy that he was an athlete, and Keane was more of the mental side of it. And he was a technical player, but at the same time, he was never a player that was good. His box-to-box game had gone at that point. And maybe again, Van Nistelrooy was lucky in the sense that his game was more around like what was going on in his head in the box and being in the right place and finishing, which you wouldn't say was going to be really hurt by.
He wasn't a Michael Owen, was he? Relying on his out-and-out pace.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe he was helped in that respect, but it is hard to imagine that it wouldn't have some, detrimental effect to his ability as a footballer. And you do have to wonder, what might have been, because
could it have been even better?
Yeah, could have been. But again, maybe it made him better at what he was, because maybe he had to focus on putting the ball in the net and being in the right place at the right time. So it could go either way. Yeah. But I look back and just, because the thing is, obviously, the other issue he's got is that he played for United, for the peak of his career, and United have got Cantona, Cole, York, Sheringham, Solskjaer, Van Nistelrooy, and then since have had Rooney and Ronaldo and Tevez and Berbatov and Van Persie. So he's unfortunate in that, when we'll be saying that soon.
But you're right.
And Rashford. But again, even when, I think if you asked me to do my all-time United 11, I'm not sure he'd make mine. And that's probably...
I was just going to ask you that question. Does he make your all-time 11?
I mean, does he make yours?
Yeah.
Fair.
Whenever I'm picking a United all-time 11, he's the first striker. It's always him and somebody else.
Really?
Because in terms of out-and-out strikers, you think of like Ronaldo, he wasn't ever an out-and-out striker for us, so I won't play him there. No. Eric Cantona was more of a link-up player than a goal scorer.
But isn't there more value to that?
You need both, don't you? You need somebody to make the goals, somebody to put it in the onion bag.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other.
Does he go in ahead of Rooney for you then?
Most times for me, yeah. Even though Rooney's one of my favourite United players.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, but there's a difference between your favourite player and the best player, in my opinion. Unless you're a bit of unless for whatever reason you're attracted to the out and out best players, then that's fine. But sometimes your favourite player doesn't have to be the best player. You like Martial. I mean,
no, and Martial's not making my team. Let's be clear.
No, I know exactly.
Again, he will one day, but no, but sure. He probably won't. Is the reality of it. I think that is the thing for me. Rooney, I probably preferred Van Nistelrooy to support, but Rooney was the better player. He had more to his game. Again, one of the other...
In terms of a broader game, absolutely. In terms of being a number 9, Ruud all day.
This is the thing, we don't know, do we? Because Rooney never really played number 9 until Ronaldo had gone. And then when he did, he scored 30 goals.
True. And this is the point I make on Rooney. Yeah, that's a point I always make on Rooney. He was always forced to play wide left or wide right, or in the number 10 slot, centre midfield for the last part of his career. And he's still our all-time leading goal scorer.
A funny quote I came across when doing the research of this podcast is that when Van Nistelrooy had gone, Ferguson had given Rooney the instruction to get into the box more. And apparently Rooney quipped back, "Oh, well, I'd be getting the end of my own crosses then." Something along those lines. So, and I believe that because Rooney is cheeky. So I can imagine he said it. But I mean, for me, Van Nistelrooy is one of my favourite all-time players, but I think he'd be on my bench of my United team.
So if you play 4-4-2, for example, just to fit people in, who gets in before him? Who's your 2?
Rooney's one. I think Cantona's the other.
Really? Okay. I can't argue because you can make a case for 4 or 5 different strikers to get in.
I think you have to...
The case to be made for York and Cole. Because why would you...
Yeah, exactly. And Cole is probably the most underrated of the lot, I would argue. But again, I think for me, and it's unfortunate again for Van Nistelrooy that he came up against probably the best Arsenal team we've ever seen.
And then a great Chelsea team.
Yeah, true. But at his peak, it was the best Arsenal team he was up against and Henry. And I think when I'm looking at doing my all-time United 11, I can look at Cantona and say he's the reason we won X amount of Premier League trophies, and he led that team. He was the best player on that team. And Van Nistelrooy was probably the best player of those United teams, but you could make a case that Scholes was, that Keane was, that Rio was when he came in, and then Ronaldo and Rooney later on. So it is difficult. And again, I suppose you just have to say, I wonder what would have been. The other question I was going to ask you, after doing all this research, sorry, someone's just apparently fallen over outside my house. In the modern era, do you think there's a place for Van Nistelrooy that there was? And then the follow-up one would be, do you think there's a version of him that could have existed in the modern era?
Ask that question again. My audio just glitched out for some reason.
Sorry. So, do you think there's a place for Ruud Van Nistelrooy in 2020 Premier League football or football? Yes, no, and also,
Yes.
Okay. So my other question was going to be, do you think there's a version of him that could have existed in this era? Because my answer would be no. I don't think in 2020, even your Brightons, and I'm not. No, it's not. It sounds ridiculous because obviously anyone would take 30 goals a season, but can you score that amount of goals these days with a defence that presses out of the box?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The thing is about Van Nistelrooy. Yeah, of course, but I think one of Ruud's underrated qualities is how quick he was.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't a slouch. Like, he could, if the game was running in behind. Yeah. The goal at Highbury in the blue kit. You know, he raced away from
Sol Campbell. We talked about that game earlier where Solskjaer gets the elbow, but one of my favourite goals because again, that was another big, massive game. Who's going to win? You couldn't call it. And that was the first goal in that game, wasn't it? It finished 2-2, am I right? Because Giggs got
2-2, yeah.
But the first goal, I remember watching that, and when he wins the ball, is it Campbell he's in the foot race against?
Yeah, Campbell and then Keown, he breezes past him.
Yeah, and he clears. Campbell was an athlete, and he clears him out, and then the finish again when he's running towards goal, because that's the other thing. Again, you have to talk about how clinical he was, and a lot of his goals, he sort of takes them in his stride because he takes a touch and finishes in the box. But in that one, he's running full pelt, and then he's got to be conscious of the defender running, alongside him and the keeper.
Stunning goal.
Great finish.
One of my all-time favourite goals that he scored. And he was one of the two or three players that I've watched in my life that I had 100% confidence he was going to score when he was in the box.
Yeah, 1-on-1, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pointless having a goalkeeper almost. Like, it's just little to no point. He'll find the gap, he'll put it away. It's so clinical.
100%.
So again, it's one of those for me where I look back and, great, all-time great, but I do think even taking into account his ridiculous goal-scoring runs he go on where he gets loads of consecutive games, the trophies he won, the Player of the Year, the Golden Boot in La Liga, the Golden Boots he would have won in the Premier League. I think even with all that context, you have to say he's one of those where he's the victim of playing at the same time as Henry. And I do wonder, obviously it'll never happen to the same extent because Ronaldo's achieved so much else. But the Henry Van Nistelrooy debate is very similar to me to the Messi Ronaldo one, where you've got a guy that is goals, and then a guy that does a bit of everything else. And I think, and gets the goals. And I think that maybe one day we'll look back, and obviously Ronaldo again, because he's such a world star, and there's a bit more of a debate because they've both won the World Player of the Year. But I do think one day, will it be a consensus in 20 years that Messi was just a better player in the way that it probably wasn't 5-10 years ago, and in the same way that maybe in 2003 it wasn't such a surefire. Henry was the better player. Yeah,
I agree. I think on the whole, Henry was slightly the better player, more strings to his bow. But on a emotional, nostalgic, personal point of view, I just love Ruud.
Yeah.
Some kind of player.
One of the most lovable strikers as well, because he was, again, like you said, you want your player to have a bit of aggro about them. You want them to be up for the fight, even if apparently for Sean they're not big enough, like Ryan Giggs. But again, absolute winner. Yeah.
What a player. Kieron, I've enjoyed it. I've said everything I've got to say. I've run through every possible stat that I could find on him. What a player, what a goal scorer, underrated player, and I'm glad we chose him for our first player profile. Enjoyed it. What did you think of it?
I did too. Obviously, we've touched on pretty much everything that happened in his career, and the little bit of debate, and like you say, contextualising at the end. I think we've done a good job. Yep. It just makes me sad that I've had to come to that conclusion, because I do think, taking everything into account, that is what I feel about him. And again, I feel like it almost just feels like his career was great, but almost a shame that we never got to see A, what he'd have been like without the injury, and B, different version of Manchester United. He maybe would have got another couple of years.
absolutely. And he still had the career he had despite those two things. So
yeah, again,
you've got to tip the hat, really. So Ruud Van Nistelrooy, that's our first player profile. I'm pleased we picked him. I'm glad we've done it. First of many, I think. That was my choice, so maybe Kieran's choice next week if he wants to. If you want to, sort of host it and lead the way and do your research and read from your crib sheets and give me a masterclass on one of your selections if that's what you fancy doing.
We'll see. Yeah, got a few in mind.
I thought you'd say that. You have a think. Thank you very much for joining us on A Game of Two Halves. We hope the video comes out in the format we want it to. Hopefully there's no technical glitches on the other side of this, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope we've delivered a decent first video for you. Certainly enjoyed doing it. Hope we've not been too miserable. Hope we've been video friendly and engaging and whatever else. Hope I've not been looking at my notes too much. So thank you very much for sticking with us if you have. This is also going to be available on iTunes, Spotify, all good podcast providers if you'd prefer the audio version of it. So head to your favourite websites to pick that up in audio form. But thank you very much for joining us on the video form. Kieran, pleasure as always. Speak to you next week. But thank you very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon.